Dark secrets, cut content, and things we were never meant to see. Nearly every Telltale game has all three, but there's one question nobody asks: how much of it would have actually made the game better? In this video, we're diving into the cut content from The Walking Dead game, but not just to show what was removed. We're exploring what the game could have been. Every character, storyline, and hidden detail covered here connects together, all leading to one conclusion. The Walking Dead game was originally intended to be far darker, far more depraved, and even more depressing than the version we ultimately received. So without further ado, let's get to work. The Save Lots Bandits. Let's start this video off with a bang. The Save Lots Bandits and how their storyline was originally meant to center around abuse. In episode 2, we're introduced to a character named Jolene. She's presented as completely unhinged, speaking total gibberish, threatening to kill Lee, and repeatedly talking about one very specific thing: the kidnapping and murder of her daughter. We know this daughter truly existed because Jolene's camp contains children's toys, and she's also obsessed with Clementine, even stealing her hat and constantly talking about keeping her safe from the monsters. Through cut content, we learn that Jolene's daughter was indeed taken by the Save Lots bandits and kidnapped. This is an extremely strange revelation, considering the game only ever really shows the bandits raiding for supplies and causing trouble. Through the cut content, however, we learn they were originally intended to be far more depraved. Connecting the dots, Lee has just been entrusted with a vulnerable child, while a violent bandit group is roaming the area abducting children and committing horrific acts on them. While this storyline would have been far too grotesque to fully include in the game, I think it should have remained in some form. What would make a protector figure more determined than learning a threat like that exists? It could have been used to strengthen Lee and Clementine's bond even further, perhaps with Lee stepping in to save her before anything could happen, similar to how he rescues her from the St. John's. And on that note, the St. John's. As gruesome as their storyline already is, would you believe me if I told you the St. John's were originally meant to be serial killers, and that Danny was even supposed to be a predator? Well, probably. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I digress. A family of 3, Brenda, Danny, and Andy, adapt to the apocalypse by eating other humans, explaining that it's all about survival and there's nothing truly wrong with it. That's pretty much the extent of what the game tells us, but what does the cut content reveal? Well, to start with, the traps scattered throughout the woods, including the one that kills Ben's teacher, were actually meant to be confirmed as belonging to the St. John's, hinting that their cannibalism had already extended far beyond luck or circumstance. In the released version of the game, this is only vaguely implied. On top of that, Danny was also supposed to be a predator, but this was once again cut. While investigating the St. John Dairy, we were originally meant to ask around and discover what happened to all of the farmhands who had worked there over the years. The answer was always that they had simply left, but it would later be revealed that the St. John's had murdered every single one of them. This has always confused me, because I've never understood why Telltale removed any of this. The entire point of the storyline is to present the player with 3 undeniable monsters, only to then make you realize that killing them in cold blood is still the wrong choice. Think about it. Lee is a convicted murderer. These people are probably going to die to the walkers anyway, so why kill them yourself? If the game had outright confirmed that they were serial killers, that Danny was a predator, and that they were actively hunting people, it would have made the choice even more difficult. It would also reinforce just how much danger Clementine was actually in this entire time. Removing these details makes the St. John's feel more quote-unquote misguided, or even in some twisted way understandable. After all, what wouldn't you do to feed your family? But I feel that weakens the storyline. It also weakens Lee's bond with Clementine, because the danger shifts from Clementine could have been seriously traumatized to Clementine could have eaten Mark's leg. Both are bad, but one is way worse. But you guys let me know what you think. Before we continue with the rest of the video, a quick message from our sponsor, Mantisleep. It's summer, you know the drill. drill. The sun's still out at 10 PM, your room's hotter than a volcano, and if you're thinking of getting comfortable, you're out of luck, pal. That's where Manta Sleep comes in. Need complete darkness? The Manta Cool Sleep Mask blocks out light while helping keep your eyes cool and refreshed. And if you're anything like me and need white noise to fall asleep, the Manta Sound Sleep Mask is a game changer, especially since you can adjust exactly where the built-in headphones sit. There's a reason Manta Sleep is considered the world's leading sleep mask brand. If you'd like to try one for yourself, you'll find the link at the top of the description. Use code TXI for 10% off your order. Now, back to the video. Lee's nightmares. This one is a bit more common knowledge, but I'll set the scene regardless. After murdering the senator who slept with his wife, Lee is sentenced to prison. Then the apocalypse begins, giving him a second chance at life and even a child to prove himself with. But there's one problem. He's haunted by what he did. We see glimpses of this in the released game, with Lee hearing his wife's voice and waking up in a panic. But that's really the only nightmare sequence we get. In the cut content files, however, Lee was meant to have many more dreams like this, with the most famous being the Doug and Carly nightmare. Whoever Lee allowed to die would repeatedly haunt him in his sleep, asking why he did it, accusing him of secretly enjoying it, and telling him he never really cared about their death. Of course, these nightmares aren't really about Doug or Carly at all. They're about his wife. The removal of these scenes is one of Season 1's greatest losses. They add so much character depth to Lee that we otherwise never get. In the final game, it often feels like Lee forgets about his crime the moment the apocalypse begins. These scenes would have proven the opposite, showing that every decision is still being shaped by it, that he's slowly buckling under the weight of his actions, and maybe even beginning to believe he deserved to be in prison and doesn't deserve this second chance. For starters, it would have made his relationship with Carly far more interesting. She could have become someone who helps him manage that trauma. More importantly though, it would have dramatically improved the confrontation with the stranger. If Lee was still actively haunted by his past, the stranger's judgment would genuinely cut through him and force him to consider whether he deserves Clementine's trust. But because the released game presents Lee as someone who's already moved on, someone largely unburdened by his past, the stranger often just comes across as insane. It's always seemed clear to me that the stranger was written as a manifestation of Lee's guilt. Just as Doug and Carly would have prodded at his psyche in his dreams, the stranger does it in reality. He voices every insecurity, every fear, and every accusation Lee has been trying to bury. Yet despite that, Telltale still chose to remove the very scenes that would have made this connection so much stronger. The stranger. If the stranger wasn't originally intended to be a manifestation of Lee's nightmares, then the cut content surrounding him arguably makes his character worse. For starters, he was meant to be far more sympathetic. He would reveal his real name, Mitch Campman, and explain that his son didn't simply disappear as we're told in the final game. Instead, the St. John's murdered him, driving Mitch into a spiral of grief and insanity. This would also do a much better job of explaining why he eventually kills his wife when she tries to leave him. He wouldn't just be evil as he's presented in the released game, he'd be traumatized, abandoned, and completely alone. But why would this have made for a better story? Because Mitch would have mirrored Lee. More specifically, he would have mirrored a version of Lee who lost Clementine to the cut version of the St. John's. The version that would have committed truly horrific acts. Imagine it, a Lee already being harassed by intrusive thoughts and endless nightmares ultimately fails to protect Clementine from the St. John's. What does he become? Probably someone not too different from the stranger. And that right there was supposed to be the horror of the stranger. Not that he was some random psychopath lurking in the shadows, but that he could have been Lee. Ultimately, Telltale chose to strip away much of that humanity and transform the stranger into more of a symbol. Essentially the game's embodiment of judgment and consequence. While I actually like that concept, I often find myself wondering what The Walking Dead could have been if the stranger wasn't really a stranger at all, but the deeply misunderstood Mitch Campman. Just a regular man who coached Little League, lost everything, and failed his family. Conclusion. So what do you think? Would this darker storyline have been much better than what we got? Or do you prefer the fact the game was toned down to be more palatable? Let me know down in the comments below. I truly read all of them. This video would not have been possible without our members. Gog, Wizard Elf, Eternal Canadian, Fresh Pokemon Hunter, Ross Mo, Donny, Poop and Sock, Beatbox Blade, Alexander Brantley, Jojo My Dojo, Dioasis, Hitomi Buckfink 777, Chesburger, Xavier the God, Weiss Belladonna, HL2GOAE, Elva, Freezing Dice, Fran Senpai Reacts, Absolute Sin, Rowan Lee, Nicholas Paradise, Tilda Anderson, Toby, Jake Brown, N/A, The Wrangler, Basspad, Ricky C, Nightfell, Felix, Janhut, Mucky, Hydro Ryu, Heart of Angel, The Wise DAC, I'm Z, Fakustrak ARG, Sawblade, Drago, Sad502, Nathan Brown, Minty Marhin, Lol GTFO, Keon Higgins, Eclipses 915, Zale, Trixivity, Saiyan Hasbin, and Smoky Pig Games. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you to anyone who's watched this far. It truly means a lot to me.